Ladies and gentlemen, praise God and welcome in. This is the Matthew Dark Show. And remember, hit subscribe everywhere you get your shows. Never miss an episode. Such a good one today. Present day culture today is at a boiling point. And why? We have division amongst us, an intentional division amongst us. Coming to the realization that Americans are actually all on the same side. It's these political leaders that have split us, divided us, but we're all against 30% on our credit card. We're all against 50% on our taxes. We're all against the invasion of our rights. And so unifying on that, discussing where we've been wrong and misled is such an important thing. I want to be loud, vocal, and in the game, but when I'm wrong, I absolutely must acknowledge that and turn and pivot. Dying on a sword that you are wrong on is so dangerous for America. It's happening right now. I have a fantastic guest. The book is Deprogramming Democrats and Uneducating the Elites. And I want to get right into this area. Lisa Eckman joins us, author, and kind of you survived the swamp. I mean, you were in the swamp, lobbyists, working on government officials. Kind of give us just, because that's the beauty of it, is when you enter something like that and then see the light and then say, I can't be a part of this anymore. I need to do something better with my life. Kind of bring us through that journey, because that's kind of where we're at right now. People have to break through false and truth and come to a conclusion that serves their hearts the best. Welcome in, Lisa. Kind of just give us a little background on your journey through DC and how you get to the book and present day.
Sure, I'll try to do that as briefly as possible. But I moved to Washington, D.C. at the very tail end of the second Clinton term in 1999, and I was brought there from Denver, Colorado, where I was getting my master's in social work through a program called the Presidential Management Internship Program, and it's a program designed to bring people with federal level education into with graduate level education into federal service. And I worked directly for a Clinton appointee at the Social Security Administration. And then I spent about the next 2 decades there working for a variety of different entities, mostly around democratic causes, although some of times I was working for a nonprofit, and we were ostensibly nonpartisan. But because I was doing disability policy advocacy, and most of what I advocated for was improving those programs, which usually meant expanding them and spending more money on them, the people that I generally worked most closely with were the Democrats. And I myself was very, I used to say I bled blue and would vote blue no matter who. And that kind of gives you an idea. But I did work in the United States Senate for a couple of years on detail from that federal agency for well-known senators such as Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts, as well as Tom Harkin of Iowa. And I also worked for government contractors and a variety of nonprofits. At the very tail end of the time I was in Washington, D.C., the nonprofit I worked for also had a political action committee that I administered. So I was doing paid lobbying work, which is different sort of than what a lot of your nonprofits tend to do. And so I kind of saw D.C. from every side. And there were a variety of factors that helped me wake up. I think the first thing was that I really did see DC change a lot in the time that I was there, as we saw this mirrored in the country overall. When I first worked in the Senate in 2001, senators of the different parties were good friends. They would go out to dinner together. They had a senator's dining room where you didn't see a partisan divide. One of the senators that I worked for a time named Jim Jeffords, who was a Republican but a disability champion, and so I worked for him, but he actually left the Republican Party, became an independent, and gave control of the Senate to the Democrats while I was working for him, which was a fascinating thing to see. But he was in an a cappella singing group, which was bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans, and they would sing, put on seersucker suits sometimes and sing together. And there was this belief, I think, across party lines that we were all in it together for the betterment of America, that we could sit down and have some good faith conversations, even though we disagreed about a lot. But what we really wanted to do was come to a compromise that would incrementally make our country better. And over time, I saw that slowly disappear, that kind of camaraderie, that kind of sort of the assumption that the person you were talking to was a good person, regardless of who they voted for in the booth and who they supported.
Was there a moment in there that you could point to and say, this is what switched? This is what happened in the culture? I mean, to take it to this extreme now, to where these people are, I mean, it feels like they're still on the same team in the sense of bettering the establishments versus the people. They've kind of collectively joined there, but there's an animosity and a hatred. How did that become so volatile?
I think I point to two different things that contributed on, and the first one is technology and social media. I think people were a lot less political; they were a lot less invested in these things, which coincided with the rise of identity politics as well. And I think it was a concerted effort that really picked up steam under President Obama to highlight what divides us as opposed to what should be uniting us. And so we put ourselves in silos. We are no longer Americans. We are gay Americans, Black Americans, this Americans, that Americans. And those qualifiers through identity politics come first. Notice I didn't say we're an American who is gay. I said we're a gay American, or we're a Black American, or we're male. And that there was a concerted effort to make us focus on those things that make us different. And then social media, which came, Facebook came out in about 2005, and so on, only serves to reinforce that. You get into these sort of information silos, and then you get what I would call, you have confirmation bias, and everything you believe to be true, you keep hearing over and over again. And we stopped. We also, as we picked up our online lives, our in-person lives changed a lot over the past 20 years. So you don't go to church with people who think a lot differently and talk to them at the church picnic, and they aren't there for you when your family has a crisis and the church is there for you, or you aren't on a bowling league with people who think really different than you. Mm-hmm. And so your only experience with them is what you hear on social media and what you see through the legacy media, which is really just an arm of the government for propaganda and censorship. So we stopped actually having experiences in person with people, and it becomes a lot easier to dehumanize them and other them when we actually don't interact with them. And I would say that during that time, I've also noticed a real change in the way our education system educates young people about our country and our differences and how we ought to approach them. And there started to become, especially on the left, but I want to just be clear that, like, I reject the left-right dichotomy now.
Me too.
Establishment versus we the people.
Correct.
I think it is, it's two wings on the same bird, and one wing gets to flap a little louder, and we pay attention to that wing, and then the other one does. So we get this illusion of choice, and meanwhile, we the people end up being, the newspaper at the bottom of the birdcage. And so we get to collect all of what runs off from that. And so, well, I don't consider myself a Republican. I don't consider myself a Democrat. And what I'm going to say will come mostly from the left, because that's where I was. I can't speak to how exactly the brainwashing or indoctrination works on people on the right. I think there are some reasons why it doesn't work quite as well, which we can get into.
Sure.
Talk a little bit more about deprogramming people. But so that's what I saw happening. And so I started to become really a little bit disillusioned with my ability to make a difference. I say that I made my way to the outside of the inner circle in DC. I wasn't in the inner circle. I wasn't part of that establishment exactly. And part of the reason why is that I was really there because I wanted to do good. I wasn't there to make a ton of money. I used to joke that I got paid the medium bucks, not the big bucks, but I got paid well, but I wasn't, raking it in because of the clients I chose to represent as a lobbyist and advocate. And so I, started to get disillusioned, but that wasn't enough to really wake me up. What helped, there's two things that I'll point to that really led to my awakening. The first one was that, my parents became sick And I lost the two of them within 2 years of each other. And my experience with what I now call our sick care system, or our medical pharmaceutical complex, or cartel,
Yes.
kind of woke me up to some of the reality of what our agencies we're actually up to, and that isn't protecting us and representing us well. It is they've been captured completely and represent the interests of big pharma if they regulate big pharma, or big oil if they regulate big oil, and so on. And what really happened is my dad got sick. He had surgery, catastrophic complications. My mom was caring for him because he needed help doing everything. He was functionally quadriplegic with adrenal failure, and he lived for 5 years that way because he really wanted to stay alive and he fought really hard. And my mom was his primary caregiver, and she had multiple sclerosis. So in 2013, she was diagnosed with stage 4 of an extremely aggressive cancer. And given the "you should get your affairs in order" speech, she may have only a few months to live, because the 5-year survival rate for someone at her stage and her age and her condition was about 6%. So she said, "I'm going to have traditional treatment. I'll do anything else that will help improve my chances." So I did a lot of research for her, found out like we actually know a lot about what causes cancer, how to fix it, but you can't patent most of what does help.
Can't patent nature.
No, you cannot. And if you follow the USDA food pyramid, you're feeding that cancer. Sugar feeds cancer. So we got my mom to a naturopath. We also changed everything she ate, put in her body, on her body, cleaned her home with, and also attempted to address one of the things that is really killing us, and that's stress, and our lack of dealing with that stress in a way that is helpful to our body. So we used guided meditation, we did focused breathing, we did stress management techniques, and all of that. So she had surgery. She started her first round of chemo, which was going to be 6 treatments, and 3 treatments in, she was completely cancer-free. No evidence of cancer. And she remained that way for 2 years. And her doctor was amazed. "I don't know how you did this. I can't imagine." At the same time, he said, "What you eat doesn't matter." So flash forward 2 years, little teeny growth appears on a scan, and she decides to have chemotherapy again. And the first chemotherapy treatment she had fried her kidneys, and she died from the chemotherapy. So all of this story is to point out that, like, I did a lot of work around healthcare. I worked with all these agencies that are supposed to be giving us health advice and protecting our health. And everything I learned there, and what the experience I had with researching for my mom, just kind of shook my foundation of faith in these institutions that I trusted. But meanwhile, my mom, she died in 2016, and I had to go back to work. So I went back to DC and started working again. And I had to kind of pigeonhole that in the back of my mind, because I'm working with these agencies and the very people who are making these recommendations. And so, but there were some large cracks in the dam that held the flood of truth back from me. Then flash forward to COVID. And like many people, I think, COVID just opened my eyes to a lot of things. And it was not easy, because, when COVID first hit, I was buying the narrative 100%. I was scared. I didn't want to hurt my neighbor who might be sick or kill someone's grandma. So I was doing the thing. And my partner, Jamie, who was my boyfriend at the time, he wasn't buying it. And so we were going at it back and forth. And he, was very much encouraging me to do my own research, to look at things. And then the censorship started hitting, and some of the natural health practitioners I had started studying after what happened with my mom were being censored, called the disinformation dozen, those kind of things. And a lot of the recommendations they were giving about COVID didn't make any sense based on the research that I did. For example, if you remember, at the very beginning of COVID, we were not allowed to leave our houses. We were, unless you were an essential worker. And by the way, the COVID sort of amnesia that people have. I say this to people and they're like, we were never locked in our houses. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, we actually were. People were turning their neighbors in, as a matter of fact. That's how bad it was. So one of the best things you can do for your health is get vitamin D. Sun is the best source of vitamin D, but no, you cannot be out in the sun. You got to hide in your house and be very afraid and breathe recycled air and all of that. So these things were starting to raise some concerns. But then combine that with the censorship. And I was raised by parents who were classical liberals, JFK Democrats, who believed in the Constitution, and were free speech absolutists. So,
and those don't exist anymore, but yes.
Yeah, it's impossible to be that because of the radical changes that have happened and the radicalization of the Democratic Party. And them being sort of captured by the socialist/communist deconstructionist wing of it.
Yes.
So I started to see that. And one day, Jamie and I were having a particularly spirited discussion. And I looked at him, I said, Jamie, I just can't believe it. I can't believe the people who I've worked with all these years would do this to us, to the world, without evidence, without data to back them up. And he looked me dead in the eyes and he just calmly said to me, Lisa, if they'll poison our water, what won't they do?
Yeah, right.
And my brain could not think its way out of that. It had pushed the cognitive dissonance that I like many liberals and many on the left, seemed to be able to hold so well to the point where my brain broke. And then he followed it up with, if you don't believe me, prove me wrong.
Right.
Go do the research. And so I may have screamed at him, yes, I will. And then I did. And, I started researching on other platforms than Google, because we can talk about that, but you don't get truth on Google. Or if I used Google, I would go to the 9th page of results instead of the first page and see what lives there. And once I did, my life was never the same. I realized that the reality I had lived in was a very, very carefully crafted, programmed, indoctrinated delusion that was not real. And, my entire reality collapsed. My entire self-esteem went away, because my self-image, my ego was all based on my work and me being a Democrat, which is part of why it's so hard for people to wake up, because they're so invested in that part of them, and that part dies.
I want to talk about that right there, because I think that is at the center of why we're in the position we're in right now. And I'll give you a great example, and I can speak clearly and loudly this cognitive dissonance that goes on the left, meaning for somehow they're able to put in the back of their mind and not acknowledge that mutilating a 5-year-old into a different sex is barbaric, demonic, and what in the world are you doing, right? So they've been able to hold that somehow. Same thing goes on the right. President Trump, Donald Trump, is actively hiding, manipulating, causing a conspiracy around the Epstein files. For whatever reason, the MAGA people won't reconcile that. They won't say, well, hold on a second, that's a lie. You told us for years there was an Epstein file. So that goes on at the heart of it on either side. This is what we need to discuss. What is it? What's the breakthrough? And I assume it's a lack of God. It's a lack of identity in the power greater than yourselves. So you put it on AOC, Chuck Schumer, President Trump. But what is it that prevents somebody from just saying, gosh, I think there's something else going on here, but I'm too scared to face it? What is wrong with that person that says, I'm not going to be a slave to this fear that you put me in? What's going on there?
So you nailed it on the head in a large part. And I think it is that the world is inherently, without faith in something, a pretty scary, ugly place. Let's just be clear about that. And obviously, part of what has gone on in our country is an effort to destroy two very fundamental things: the family and religion. And this is part of any cultural revolution towards communism. So that is a big part of where it comes from. And it is in part, I believe, a part of that is a lack of faith in the creator. Because when you have that, you're loved, you're accepted, and the creator has your back, and it's all going to be okay. And if you don't have any relationship with the creator, you don't have that. But the
Amen.
second part of that is the indoctrination that goes on in schools. And you'll notice that a lot of these liberals are very highly educated, like I am. Like I have a law degree, a master's in social work, and a bachelor's degree. Well, the longer you spend in school, the more you learn that you don't question authority. Teacher's always right, because if you don't say teacher's right, then you don't get a good grade and you don't get put in honors classes and you don't all the things that you would get to succeed. So what you have on the left is people that worship authority and idolize the expert. And we saw this in COVID. It's a very clear example. But I believe putting the faith there, and the powers that be have used experts to make, and identity politics in particular, to make people extremely afraid.
Yes.
Very afraid. And fear and divide and conquer are two of the oldest control strategies possible. So what happens is you have these highly educated people who believe there's a monopoly on knowledge with experts, and anyone who is not a certified, credentialed, educated expert doesn't know what they're talking about. It doesn't matter how long they've studied it, doesn't matter what research they've done, they can't know, because only people who go through the system that you have gone through and are now an expert can know what they're talking about.
Right.
So and what happens is also when you go through, the longer you're in education, the more you sublimate your intuition, your gut, and your heart, which are the things that connect you to something bigger than yourself besides the government. And it also are the things that make you say, when someone tells you something that isn't right, it makes you say, wait a minute, that doesn't really feel right. That doesn't sit right. And so you sublimate that because it's in contradiction with those experts. So how do people hold these things? Well, two different experts told them these things. So they can't question it. They can't question. And so their mind doesn't even have the pathways to ask those questions anymore. And the biggest thing you find, I think, and it may be the same thing with MAGA on the right, but I can't really speak to that because that's not where I come from. But people on the left just stop asking questions and they stop thinking for themselves. And I think if you looked at any interviews at these supposed No Kings demonstrations that happened, they can't get beneath the top line talking points on anything to tell you why do they believe the way that they do. And there's another thing that fear does. You can only hold love or fear in your heart. So if you hold the love of the creator in your heart, it's a lot harder to manipulate someone with fear.
Yes.
But the other thing that fear does is it shuts down the critical thinking. It shuts down the part of your brain that would allow you to ask these questions. And when you're afraid, you don't act from principle anymore. You don't act at all from what are my foundational principles and how does what they're proposing or saying fit with them. And so the ends start to justify the means. And so that's why you see people saying, well, I'm going to turn my neighbor in for walking their dog when no one else is outside, because there's no principle behind it, but it's going to keep me safe and the people I care about safe if I turn this person in. And so it's a really scary place to have
absolutely
a portion of your country be so controlled by fear. And one of the ways that it's, I think, really been effectuated is to take the compassion that most people on the left have, manipulate that compassion using fear, and then weaponize it using anger.
Absolutely.
For these selective group of people who are deserving of our compassion, and these are the historically oppressed, the vulnerable. And to get back to your point, Matthew, it is because experts told them that if we don't let these 5-year-olds mutilate themselves, and make sure, then they're going to kill themselves. And they have compassion. And we've gotten to the point where people in that group on the left, and there are only about 20% of probably our population that are in that group. There are a lot of people sort of on the edge of it, but feeling like they can't speak up because they will be excommunicated from the cult, as I call it, the progressive cult. But an expert told them that that's what's going to happen. And so they have compassion for that 5-year-old. And they have gotten to the point where they believe, because the experts have told them again, that they are morally superior to the people who don't believe like them. And so that gives them the right to lash out, and call people names and all these kind of things. So, and they're doing it with what they believe is the best intentions. But what do they say the road to hell is paved with?
Right.
When you don't stand on principle and you don't look at and question, what you're being fed every day through media, through social media, legacy media, I should say. Thank goodness we have independent journalists now.
Absolutely. That's the difference now, is that you go back 20 years when you get in the game in Washington, D.C., it was legacy media, and there was this authoritative figure. We've done this kind of transformation into where government is God, right? So Chuck Schumer is somebody that we would say, oh, now hold on a second, he's about to speak. And so it's just crazy to think from, 250 years ago until now, that we would perch these unworthy, undesirable people like AOC, like Chuck Schumer, like Adam Schiff, like Nancy Pelosi, and we perch them up there. It's like, wow, how did you guys desecrate yourselves so much to think that that is a person that should be, dictating how your child grows up or whatever? Our guest is Lisa Eckman. The book is Deprogramming Democrats and Uneducating the Elites. That point you made there, you get highly educated. You're a Harvard doctor, and they were the ones that were saying, take a COVID shot, wear a mask, worship Dr. Fauci, stay indoors. What you eat doesn't matter. I mean, think about this. The mama bear who came up during COVID is more educated, more sound than the Harvard trained doctor that's recommending a COVID shot. And the mama bear is proven correct today, because we know the COVID shot never stopped transmission or hospitalization or prevented death. We know that. We personally, so we have a medical practice here in Denver. Hundreds of the vaccine injured have come through our office. Some were going to return to health someday. Others will not. They're bedridden for life. But that Harvard doctor will still say pregnant moms should get the COVID shot, the 6-month. That's a major problem in America, where authority now has basically given the people over to the dark side, to truly wicked, evil. I mean, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would have won, what would the health policies be today? I mean, so you have to figure, this is very dangerous.
Matthew, I can't hear you.
Oh, hold on a second. Let me see. Okay, you got me? Hold on a second.
Okay, I got you again.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's good.
There we go. You still with me?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, got it. So this idea of how do the people, because I don't know that we're going to get that Harvard doctor that's making $250,000 a year or $500,000. He may not ever come to a point of repentance or saying I'm wrong. How does the underneath, the body, the organic movement, what do we need to do besides? It might be as simple as get God in their life. What's the transition from I'm obedient to government versus I'm obedient to the Holy Spirit, I'm obedient to the Creator? What's got to be the movement underneath to get that to start?
So, first of all, I always like to say the word doctor is practically indoctrinated, if you think about it. So, I mean, they go to school, and you can just look at what happened to doctors who tried to speak up during COVID. They got their licenses pulled, so in many cases, and just, attacked viciously. So, I wish I had an easy answer for you. As much as people are indoctrinated to believe in the expert, they have also been indoctrinated to believe that people who have faith are stupid and educated, right? So,
And if I believe in God, I'm also a racist. I'm also a white Christian nationalist. I'm immediately like the worst person in the world. Okay, continue.
so I think, the biggest thing I would say is that we're not going to beat, just like Martin Luther King Jr. said, you're not going to beat hate with darkness. You have
Yeah.
to beat it with love.
Yeah.
And it's a very challenging process, but I would go to, the process that worked with me and Jamie. It was that he really cared about me and he asked me questions,
Wow.
because he cared. And with no assumption that I was a bad person and no assumption that I was inferior, none of those
Yes.
things. So asking questions of people is where it has to start. And here's the harder part. For him and he knew me really well. So he knew some things that I already believed that could help open the door to letting other facts come through.
Right.
So the questions that you ask have to not presume an answer and not presume facts that the person that has been contradicted by experts. So I'll give you an example. If you are talking about, let's talk about freedom of speech. It used to be people on the left really cared about that, right?
Yes.
So you could ask a question: what does freedom mean to you, and
Yep.
is it important, right? And if the answer is, if they I mean, the truth is, I find a lot of young people, especially on the left, don't even know what freedom is, don't even know why it matters. Don't They have been so brainwashed to believe in this collectivism and
Yep.
the horror of colonialism and the American experiment that they don't even know what freedom is. But what asking these questions does, first of all, is it shows that you care about what their opinions are. And you're not coming from a place of, you're just a stupid libtard, I want to
Yep.
educate you about why you're wrong. It's about, I really want to understand why you think what you do. And maybe you'll convince me. Now, obviously, almost every case, they won't at this point, because if you're awake, you're not going back to sleep in today's day and age. There's
Right.
no way.
No way.
But it does come from that place and allows them to understand that you're not attacking them, you're not attacking what they believe, and you're not trying to. So they don't believe in the creator in general. So
No.
they are looking for external validation from their tribe, their group.
Yes.
And so it's very dangerous to express an opinion right now in that group that doesn't lockstep in what they believe. So I call it the need for ideological conformity in the book.
Yeah.
And I saw it get worse and worse and worse. I mean, abortion is the perfect example of that. On the left, they used to want it to be legal, safe, legal, and rare. And now it's abortion whenever I want it, for whatever reason, at whatever stage. And so, and if you don't believe that, you can't be part of the club. So what you're doing is showing, no, look, I care about you. I'm validating that you're important and what you believe is important, trying to understand it. And then you use the Socratic method. So then you say, okay, well, what about freedom of speech? And then you say, okay, what does that mean? We're at a really bad place about speech in this country, where many on the left actually will say to you, no, speech is violence. In and of itself, it's violence. Um, I heard this anecdote recently, and I was like, wow, because I even quote the saying in the book, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I guess what they say to kids nowadays is, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will last forever.
Right. Absolutely. More
And
crushing
so,
than the broken bone.
yeah, and so I think, it's about so, what does freedom of speech mean? And then how, obviously, maybe you wanted Joe Biden to have the power to determine what was true or not and what could be said, but do you really want Donald Trump to have that
Right.
power? And then sort of trying to push them somewhere that they can't keep the cognitive dissonance alive in their brain.
Right.
And that is really what you're trying to do, is give them permission to ask questions and allow them the freedom to think for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's challenging because what happens is when you threaten the indoctrinated, brainwashed reality that they live in, the reptilian survival brain in the brainstem takes over because their subconscious knows you are about to put them in a place where reality disappears. And in a way, as I said, the former me died when I woke up. So it is a literal survival, but it is survival not in a physical sense.
Yes.
And so that's when you see them start lashing out, calling you the ism, the phobia, all the things that used to stop people who were awake from pursuing that, and will generally stop most people who are still on the left, even if they're not completely brainwashed, from going any further because they've been called the name, right?
Right.
But what I encourage people to do is, view that as a badge of honor. Don't take it
Absolutely.
personally, and know that you actually have started to get through. And the hardest part about this is you're not likely to ever see the fruits of your labor, but
True.
you have planted a seed, right?
Yep.
And when the right conditions occur, that seed may germinate and that person may wake up.
I
I
think that's
think
beautifully said. I mean, because it comes from a place of love. I know I'm right about the COVID shot. I know I'm right about the mutilation of children. I don't need to be defensive or prideful about, oh gosh, well, they believe this. It's already out there. It's because I care about my fellow man that I want to come to you. And maybe I'm missing something, but I might have something to offer you too. Would you be willing to have a discussion? That's how it has to go. Because right now, they put that fear, that division, and what do? We double down on our position that's wrong, right? So we're doubling down on abortion. We're doubling down on the LGBTQ. We're doubling down on BLM. We're doubling down on the invasion from the third world. Come on, come all. As opposed to saying, you're right, that there is a limit to how many people can come in. There should be an age that we require before we lop off a child's private parts. There should be. And right now, it's this race to extremism. It's because we don't have conversations. They can't tell. I'm a Christian man, okay? I love and worship the Lord Jesus Christ. But if my fellow man can't see that because of the way I behave, then it's no good, right? They need to see the love of Christ. They need to see this is what it looks like when you walk it out and you're not affected by fear and government. So I think it's beautifully said. It's the only way out. We're not going to vote our way out of this. We can clearly see that. It's an organic movement. If you're mad about big pharma, stop buying their product. Take care of your health. If you're mad about social media and what is to get off social media, don't buy their product. If you don't like the shows that Netflix is putting on for your children, cancel your subscription. We as a collective, our money is so much more powerful than we give it credit for. We could do right now. Okay, we're all Americans. You like abortion. I despise abortion, but we also hate the fact of what government has done to us. Would you be willing to lock arms on this issue? Because if we all said, you know what, we're canceling our Comcast, our cable bill this month. We don't want it. And we'll come back when you satisfy our needs as a collective. There's no stopping that money. We're not going to shop at Target anymore as a collective. We're not going to pay taxes as a collective. We're not going to do this as a collective until then. But that's the only way out, right? This divided America, multiple parties, families divided over COVID, families divided over the LGBTQ, families in disarray, families godless. This has to be an organic, back to basics, love thy neighbor, or we just implode. Is that fair?
I think it is pretty fair. I mean, our founders warned us about factions very strongly, and our leaders are pushing the factions instead of doing what our founders counseled in terms of tamping them down. I think that, it's hard. I am not, I don't participate at a church. I have my faith and my belief with the Creator, and it's really hard to get people who have had almost literally religion demonized to them for their entire lives to go straight at it that way. But I encourage, part of what I encourage in the book for someone who is trying to wake up is to explore their faith. And because I think it's really important to feel a connection to something bigger than yourself,
Yes.
To remove the ability to manipulate you through fear, but also to feel connected to your fellow humans in a different way. If we are all the creator's children,
Right.
we are connected in a way that is very different than if we are all focusing on the ways in which we're different as opposed to the ways in which we are the same. And I think it is fair that to say that we're on a really bad path. And, I think you're right. We do have a lot of power if we unite economically, and that's why they divide us. Right now, our economic power is being dwarfed by lobbying and donor spending in our government. And we are not going to be able, as you say, to vote our way out of this because in last year, almost $4.6 billion was spent on lobbying. And there was close to 20 billion at the federal level only. I'm talking about there was close to $20 billion spent on the elections at the federal level. So it's not a stretch to say that it's much harder for a constituent's voice to get through all the money. And this is that $4.6 billion is $1 billion more than it was 10 years ago. So it's growing exponentially. And a lot of that, almost $1 billion of it, is spent on healthcare. And I think there are a couple other things that we're really facing that I think we have to have some honest conversations about if we want to restore sanity and our oneness as a country. And one of those is a really severe mental health crisis that we face in this country. And the fact that what we do about that right now is we put people on extremely strong drugs that don't necessarily help the situation. And I'm glad that Secretary Kennedy is looking into whether they're actually feeding a lot of this violence that is going on in the country. Yeah. And I agree. It's funny to me because pretty quietly during COVID, research came out that clearly showed that SSRIs, that depression is not a serotonin reuptake issue at all. Correct. But we're continuing to keep millions and millions of people on these SSRIs, which have homicidal and suicidal ideation as black box warnings. So, but again, experts, the AMA and everybody else and the FDA are still saying take your drugs to feel better. But we need to have a conversation about where that comes from. And I do think a lot of that is alienation due to lack of connection to each other and the disappearing community that, people don't go to church and they don't see the people who aren't like them and see them in a positive light at the church picnic and, appreciate the dish they brought. They don't have bowling leagues anymore where they do these things. And the role of technology cannot be understated, in my opinion. It is so I appreciate technology. I appreciate that I can sit here and have this conversation with you without, the miles between us mattering. Right. But at the same time, I can't feel your humanity through this conversation. True. I can't feel the energy field that I would feel if I were in the same room with you. Right. And I'm going to get a little out there maybe on this, but, we're electromagnetic chemical beings. And we only really treat the chemical part of ourselves through our sick care system in this country. And the EMFs that we are bathed in all the time, the lack of natural light, the lack of connection to God's creation outside, nature, makes all of these things that happen on social media easier to do to us. So disconnecting, I only have, I'm on X. I don't participate much. I got rid of all my social media when I woke up. And to your point about Comcast and Netflix, we don't watch TV in this house at all.
Me either. Yeah.
So we just we only we do look at alternative media, but we try to get outside a lot. And whenever they aren't painting the sky with whatever it is they paint the sky with these days, and the sun is out, I try to get out there and absorb natural sunlight and let my feet touch the earth, my bare feet. So, these are other things too, I think, that are important to keep in mind. I worry about our youth and the future, because their ability to have a conversation in person sometimes seems really challenged. And the there are young people in their 20s that I know, where when I talk to them, what they see on their screen is more real to them than what they see in front of their face. And
That's terrible.
it is terrible, and it's part of the challenge we face in terms of undoing where we find ourselves, because it is so much easier to villainize someone that you're not standing in front of and feeling their energy and seeing and feeling how what you just said affects them.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to stop right there on something you just said, because as you're speaking, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, this is all social media's fault, the internet's fault. But I think there's something even more that's a staple in our society that caused, at least was an early ambassador for this disconnect, and that's text messaging. It used to be if I was mad at somebody or had a problem with somebody, I would have to confront them either on the phone or in person when I saw them next. I can very bravely, boldly, courageously send a text message. You're a this, you're a that. I would probably not say those things face to face. There's this impulsivity that goes out on the text message, a disconnect inherently. But I know I'm guilty as charged. If I'm having a problem with somebody, I'm going to go to that text and tell them that versus picking up the phone and say that. That's cowardly on my behalf. And that's how we've sort of, migrated to this disconnect. Any truth to that as well?
100%. I can share a little anecdote that points this out 100%. When I woke up, Jamie and I moved to a farm. We decided we wanted to grow our own food and have a little bit more of our self-sustainability. So we have some Dutch Shepherds and we had some puppies, and we were trying to find homes for them. And I'd have people all the time just sort of reserve a puppy and then back out. And I would text them, or they would text me, and I would say, well, why don't you call me? Maybe we can work it out. And none of them would. They don't have the ability to actually have a conversation and take responsibility and accountability for them, their own actions. And I think that, and you see it also with, people just not responding. Because that's the thing, is you can avoid confrontation, and you can avoid having to take accountability and responsibility for your actions with technology in a way that wasn't possible before that. And so, I often come off sounding like a real Luddite, because I don't think, we have done a lot of things around technology without asking, should we do this? Is this actually better for humans? And the truth is, the people pushing this, a lot of them are transhumans. They think we would be better fully integrated as biotechnology beings.
Absolutely.
There's sort of this whole, I think, thing that runs through Western medicine as well. We can improve on God's creation through chemicals and technology. And I think there's a large amount of hubris there, and a large amount of, and a large contributor to the problems that we currently see happening. Because, I use this as an example. Like I do talk about the crazy gender ideology stuff in the book, Deprogramming Democrats, quite a bit. I went and looked and did a lot of research, and there's no studies about puberty blockers for kids long term. There's no studies about cross
zero. There's none of this.
No cross hormones. But here's where I get to, even the birth control pill for women.
Yes.
There are no long-term studies about the physical effects, or especially the emotional effects. Why do you think a lot of our problem is women my age on the left these days?
Right.
Most of them probably
they're unstable. They're unhinged. They're out of it.
they're hormonal.
Right.
And they've been
Right.
manipulating their body's hormones forever without any studying of what that actually means. I think one of the things that maybe made me, able to wake up in a way that others aren't is I, for some reason, in my late 20s, said, I don't think this is good for me, and I stopped ever taking any hormone
Yes.
pills or any pharma pills for that matter. And I don't use them at all. And I think that's a big part of the challenge is that people want an easy answer. People want, if I say to you, I could help you get rid of almost any disease you have if you will change your habits, if you will eat differently, drink more water, exercise more, do all these things. Or I could give you this pill, which is going to manage your symptoms, but never cures you. And most likely you'll be on another pill at some
Yep.
point.
They'll take the
They'll
pill.
take the pill.
Yep. Every
And
time.
and that's a challenge that we really face, and the fact that those people who are talking about natural health and those kind of things are demonized, and they're not experts. So
Yeah,
that
you're right. Here's what you have to do as an American citizen is we have to start assessing the fruit that's coming off these leaders' role. Okay. And number one thing for a Christian person, who is this person? Who is this leader? Who is this FDA chairperson getting their wisdom from? They're getting it from some college professor at Harvard? Okay, not interested. That advice is proven to hurt human beings, right? That's true. You talked about how we can enhance and build off of God's creation. I think that's 100%. And then that fine line. For example, the fact that we can fix a broken leg today, like we couldn't say 3,000 years ago, to me, that's taking God's people and sustaining human life and expanding the kingdom. I think that's good. Putting a pig's heart into somebody's body and keeping them alive that way, I don't know. I think that's where we start to get into a slippery slope of, well, hold on a second. This is no longer the creation. This is something else. This is an implant, a chip. And now because we're just sort of going along and it's going along with the Joneses, well, they're doing this, so we're doing this. I also want to say this and give some grace to the parents and to the citizens today that are in this, and they're really not paying attention to what's happening. They've got us so maxed out economically. Our commitments are everywhere. When are we going to slow down and look at this stuff? Mom's got to work full time. Dad's working full time. Kids are still doing school and activities. Oh yeah, we got to get to church. Oh yeah, we got to get to the Bible. Oh yeah, we got to get to look at, now what's this law that we're supposed to vote on? Nobody has time to do and step back and look at any of this stuff. So, part of it is like, okay, we might have to go without, we may not have all the perks and thrills that the neighbor has, because our family has to slow down and do things more godly, less secularly, less worldly. I mean, getting caught up in because the neighbor has this, we have to have this. That was the design. And that's how this economy keeps going. Get the credit cards maxed out, get mom working a second job, and we can have it all. But what did we get out of this? Well, we didn't. We have depressed kids, or we have kids that are lost. We have kids that are isolated. We have kids that are stuck on video games. They can get pornography anytime they want on their phone. We just went and saw Dr. Leonard Sachs, and he's doing a lot of work with the social media impact on kids and these young brains. And now here we are at 12 years old. You've got a phone and you can go anywhere in the world on this phone. And we've done this. And mom's, hold on a second, mom, you wouldn't let that kid drive right now, but you gave him this phone. And I think maybe just kind of finish it there, because as a parent, if you've got an under 18 living with you, you have a chance to change this cycle. Maybe mom and dad got caught up in the cycle, but your kids don't have to be a part of that too. I guess what's a good way to kind of reset the home, reset the outlook on society? I want parents saying, no, we're so grateful to have a home, kids, a family, all this other stuff. We don't need all that stuff. We're just back to the love of our home. And now how can we spread that to our neighbors? I don't know. Is that Pollyanna to think like that or to want something like that?
No, I think we can get from here to there, but it will be challenging. There's a great deal of social pressure to keep up with the Joneses. And I think one of the things that the step away from faith cost is a lack of a sense of gratitude in people.
Yes.
And this is one of the main things that I see on the left. I'm sure it's there on the right too, but it is that I can't ever be grateful because I'm always comparing myself to everybody else. So I think if people could just wake up and list for each other what they are grateful for, it
Yes.
would completely change the way that they function. And the more of us that can talk about this, I think I do my best to maintain hope and faith that we will get there. It is
Yeah.
really challenging, and we are seeing the generations that were raised on the phones themselves now raising their kids.
Right.
But I also, we see a big homeschooling movement, and we see a lot of people, and it may be that we are going to become even more divided before we can unite. And I
Yes.
hate to say that, but um, you know, maybe you can't have your kids hanging around the kids who are on the phone all day if you
That's
want
right.
your kids not to be addicted to it.
Okay.
It's a dopamine addiction like anything else. So,
Right.
um, but I think that it's worth the effort to try, because what other
Yes.
choice do we have? We're at a really bad place.
Yeah.
The reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination couldn't have been any clearer that we're at a really bad
That's
place.
right. You're in a dark place, and it's twofold. And I think this is the darkness that must be exposed. The reaction from the left to celebrate it, to say he deserved it. You talked about the words being worse than a broken bone. That's what they said, because he didn't like the LGBTQ or thought it was wrong. He deserved to be killed. That's very dark. What's equally as dark is the clear deception and manipulation and lies coming out around the investigation and the trial, and they're going to execute this poor Tyler Robinson, who had nothing to do with it, but we're going to kill this kid so we can move on and mark one off. These are disturbing. So we are living in this labyrinth of lies, and it's our job to pick through, sift through, and have hope on the other end. Because I mean, the moment is going to be coming, because I do agree with you. It's a chaotic, it's a moment like, I think of it like the alcoholic. Okay. He's been drinking for years. He knows it's a problem. It's getting worse. And he hits that rock bottom. He hits that moment in time in which I can die, or I'm going to stop and never do this again. And we're going to come to that in America. Absolutely. It's happening this year, to where it's like, okay, I'm going to be a slave to government forever, or I am never doing this again. You don't get my vote. You don't get my money. You don't get my obedience. You get none of it, because it's killing me and my family. It's killing America. So it takes boldness, takes bravery. It takes our pocketbook and our connection to our fellow man to say, are you with me? I'm with you. Are you with me? Because as it stands right now, we're the only thing holding Americans that believe in Constitution, Americans that believe in freedom, Americans that believe in freedom of speech, Americans that remember 50 years ago, these kind of things before things got very wicked. It's worth fighting for, because there is no other place to go from here. I mean, we always talk about America's the greatest place. The only reason we can say that is because of the American dream. And the American dream has hope. It has gratitude. It has freedom. It has all these privileges. Well, those are being constrained at an accelerating rate. Final thoughts here on kind of where you have your eyes. Next event, how do we proceed here the rest of the year? Give us your kind of thoughts.
Oh, it's really hard for me to predict, what comes next. I think that we're beginning to see beyond the spin and the numbers on the economic situation. People are really suffering. I don't know how we end this government shutdown that we're in, for
Right.
example. And um,
Yeah, real quick on that. They say, and this could be that chaotic event you're looking for. What they say is that on November 1st, all those on EBT, all those on SNAP, they go crazy. They go berserk. They go into Walmart and they clear the shelves. I mean, we're going to see exactly how many people survive off of government handout, and the reaction once that goes away. It's going to be volatile. It's going to be extreme. I've already heard and seen some social medias that, if you take away my SNAP benefits, I'm just going to steal twice as much and stuff like this. So I don't know. I think you're dead right. What incentive do the Democrats have to resolve this when chaos and a blight on Donald Trump will certainly be on the table the longer this goes?
They really don't. And I mean, in the book, I talk a lot about the Cultural Revolution in China and how we're
Yeah.
mirroring what happened there. And chaos in the cities was a huge part of that with the youth and the Red Guard in China. And we have our own version of that with Antifa, and then now with,
Mhm.
poor urban folks who are
Yes.
about to lose their free ride. And are gonna react. And
Mhm.
on the one hand, I get it. If you can't feed your family, you're gonna do what you
Yep.
have to do to feed your family. At the same time, I think that this is a purely manufactured crisis by the Democrats because of two things. One being that the changes that were made to Medicaid so that a lot of illegals can't get access anymore. And the second one is the fact that the Affordable Care Act, which was not in any way affordable, it has made
No.
things completely unaffordable.
Correct.
Those subsidies are about to expire, and the people being sick props up 1/5 of our economy in this country. And
Right.
if people don't have insurance anymore, what happens
Yeah.
there? And so, what incentive do they have? I don't know. But it is so telling that they will go on TV now and tell you we're using these people's SNAP benefits as leverage to
Yes.
get these other things. They're clearly telling you they don't care about you. They care about their own power and to try to fix the mess they put us in the first place. So
Yes.
this particular one, I don't know how we get out of it. The Republicans are very fair to say we're not going to negotiate. We just want to clean. We'll open it at any time if you just let us open it. Just
Right.
vote to open it, and then we can talk about this.
Right.
Um, but I do think that we're going to see some chaos. I would say everybody keep yourself safe.
Yep.
I went and did all my shopping this week, so I don't have to
Smart.
go to the stores. But ground yourself back in your own gratitude and love, and that's really where
Amen.
we, I think, have to stay, because we we're we're fighting a spiritual battle, and it is definitely time to show where you stand there. And I agree with you that when we hit a critical mass of people who refuse to give consent to the governing that they're doing, um, we will be able to restore power to we the
Yeah.
people in the way that what it was envisioned. I just don't know. I mean, people are really afraid, and I agree with you. I want to give some grace to people too. The economy that people face today is nothing like what I
No.
grew up in, and neither is the world, and neither
Nope.
is the country. That they, you know, I think the '80s and the '90s were some of the best times
Absolutely.
ever. And but I understand why someone born in the late '90s, early 2000s has a very different view and a very dark view of America based on when they were born.
Doesn't look the same. My
No,
folks bought a house. This is a nice suburb, just nothing nice special on the house, but just a nice, clean, safe. You could have a family of four in it. That was a $90,000 house in the mid 1980s. That same house today is 500,000. You go from basically a blue collar job, could afford that, to you have to be of significant substance to afford a $500,000 house. The average price in America for a home is $450,000 right now. You need a $100,000 and up job, and mom's probably going to have to work too to get a home. Well, that was the American dream. I could have a family, I could work for 30 years, I could retire, play golf, life is good, play with the grandkids. That is so far removed from the American dream today. It's no, no, no. I got to find an affordable apartment that's next to a light rail or some kind of mass transit, and I can take that back and forth from my job. I'm not getting married. I'm not in saving. There's no investing going on. It's a ticking time bomb, the demise of the American dream, until we say, nope, cell phones too expensive, Netflix too expensive, cable's too expensive, your groceries are out of control, gasoline is still $3 a gallon. That's what it was before Donald Trump. We're not getting the break in the pricing that we demanded. So again, We can't vote our way out of it. We'll have to change the system from within. Our guest is Lisa Eckman. The book is Deprogramming Democrats and Uneducating the Elite, two of the most important things going on. Not that MAGA, not that the Republicans, they are just as disgusting. They are just as disgusting of people. And what we're saying is that these are men, these are women, these are flesh, these are people with flaws. And if they're not serving God, they're serving something else. I only support leaders that are taking their guidance, their wisdom from the Most High. I can't listen to you if you learned it from a book. I know God uses people to do different things, even atheists. But at the end of the day, if you're making decisions for billions of people like COVID-19, God has to tell you, give them the shot. It's safer. Not you, not Dr. Fauci, not these people telling us these things. This is so good. I mean, this is the topic of the day, topic of the times. It must be addressed. We must come to a place where I don't care if I was wrong. I don't care about my flesh. I don't care about my pride. I was wrong. I want to do better because I have kids. I have a society. I have a family, blah, blah, blah. I just want to do the best because I'm seeking truth. And I think if you're a really free person, you're going to seek the truth wherever it takes you, no matter how painful it is when you get there. So what? You just want the truth. Okay. It turns out evolution is a joke. The Big Bang Theory is a joke. The idea that comets hit each other and formed what we live in today. It sounds silly when you say it out loud, but that's okay. We're going to get you there at some point because it's going to come through an act of love. Lisa, tell me all the places that we can connect with you, follow you, get the book, all those things. Tell us.
Sure. The book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can find out more about me and where I'm going to be, where you can hear me and things like that on my website, deprogrammingdemocrats.com. And I am Deprogrammed Dem on X.
Excellent. We'll have all those links in the show notes. I want to do it again. I want to stay hard on this topic. I'm praying that this is something that goes into the heart of a person that says, you know what, maybe I was wrong. And it's no big deal to be wrong. It's okay. What's worse to do that is be wrong and die on that sword as you're wrong. So we could wake up and change things today. Lisa, I want to thank you so much. It's been so good. We'll have you back. Folks, do this until next time. Serve God, help others, stay good. Goodbye. God bless everybody.
The Matthew Dark Show, your one-stop show for truth, courage, fellowship, and faith. Available everywhere you get your podcasts.